If you haven't already, you should most definitely jump on board with Vinous, the iPhone app, which recognizes any wine with just the snap of a photo. You've got an amazing piece of technology in your pockets, guys. It's called an iPhone, and it has a little thing on it, which is basically a camera, and it can help you to keep track of all the wines that you drink and enjoy, and maybe you want to share with various networks. You can actually link your app up with Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, that kind of thing. It's a fantastic piece of technology. Vinous is changing the way that we enjoy wine, and it's also helping us to buy wines. You can follow people, including wine professionals and wine experts like myself, and listen to their recommendations and find where you might be able to buy wines and how much you might be able to pay. So jump onto www.getvinous.com/Vincast, download the app, start snapping away, and start interacting with other wine lovers who maybe listen to the Vincast. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Vincast. My name is James Kersbrook, otherwise known as the Intrepid Wino, and it has been a pretty hectic schedule for me of late. I do apologise for the lateness of this episode of the podcast. I've been doing a bit of travel over to Adelaide, up to Sydney, and at the end of next week, I'm heading over to Europe for a few weeks for the Pro Wine Fair and also for Vinitaly and the side fairs around that. Pretty excited about that. Hopefully I can record a few episodes so that I can actually upload them whilst I'm away so you guys don't miss out. But just in case I don't, I will be back on board very soon when I return. I hope you guys are enjoying the last of summer, if you're in Australia, of course. We had some beautiful weather up in Sydney this past week, which I spent with my guest for this week. In case I haven't mentioned it already, I actually work for an importer of Italian wine in particular, based out of Sydney, called Lario International. I'm Melbourne based, and my responsibilities are to sell the wines here to retail and to restaurant, that kind of thing, bars. And one of our producers who was out for the Gambero Rosso Tre Bicchieri tastings, particularly in Sydney, was here. And so I sat down with her in the offices up in Sydney and had an interesting chat. Her name is Lucia Barzanò, and her family have owned Il Mosnel for many, many years. And they're based in Franciacorta, which, if you didn't know, is considered to be sort of the best place for sparkling wine in Italy. So we had a really interesting chat. Hope you enjoy this episode. I will see you on the other side. Lucia, thank you very much for making some time to talk on the Vincast today, and welcome to Australia. I believe this is the first time you have visited Australia.
Yes, thank you, James. Yes, it's my first time here in Australia and in Sydney, so I'm so excited about this country and this experience. So it's very nice.
And of course, we're here in Sydney where it's, I guess, summer is technically supposed to be finished. We're in March now, but we've had some very lovely warm weather. How have you been coping with the warm weather when back in Lombardia it would be starting to be spring, but still quite fresh?
Yes, we have the queue of the winter, and we are waiting for spring. So we we are a little bit tired about cold weather, and we are waiting for the hot one.
And very soon, you'll be at Pro Wine and then Vinitaly very soon after this. I'm sure this is a very important time of the year for you. So the preparations, I'm sure, are going to be very fun.
Yes, it's a very intense period with a lot of important appointments. I've been to USA last 2 weeks, and then in Australia, and then Pro Wine. So very important appointment and very important challenge for making Franciacorta more and more popular in the world.
So, your family have been in this particular part of Lombardia for a long, long time, and Franciacorta as far as the wine that we know, we think of today, is hasn't always been made this way in this part of Italy. When did your family was 1838?
1836, yes.
36? And what sort of business were they in when they established in this area?
It was a typical farm, we can say. So it was a mixed agriculture. So they had cows and also some cereals and wine, and so
Azienda.
Azienda, yes, azienda agricola, yes. Okay. So this was for generation, and then it was at the end of the 60s that the Franciacorta DOC was established, and my mother decided to plant the first vineyards with the DOC, so with the new rules of Franciacorta, and then decided to focus the farm on wine, so to make a real modern winery like it is now.
But in the area where Franciacorta is now, there was a bit of history with wine before?
Yes, there was a production of wine, still red and still white wines made with indigenous grapes that now are disappeared.
Okay.
And then we found some old books with a history of a doctor who started to make sparkling wine by chance, as it was in France, and he considered this sparkling wine, as a medicine.
Medicinal.
Yes,
and restorative powers.
It called it vino mordace. Mordace means sparkling. It means very a sort of aggressive wine because of the bubbles.
Oh, aggressive. Okay. So tell me, why was Franciacorta created the way that it is now in terms of making wines in Metodo Classico and using these different grape varieties, the non-indigenous grape varieties?
Mm-hmm. But that was about a sort of intuition of Guido Berlucchi and Franco Zigliani, two men who decided to begin this business of sparkling wines with the traditional method, because they were convinced that the characteristic of the soil and of the weather of Franciacorta were very similar to Champagne, and could be very good for the production of sparkling. That's why they began to produce sparkling wine. And my mother was a friend of Guido Berlucchi, who was a very good friend since a lot of time, and so he convinced my mother to begin with this kind of wine, which could be the right way to make Franciacorta a good wine.
Was there, at the time in Italy, was there interest? Was there increasing demand for sparkling wine? Or was it just they saw an opportunity to make a great wine and they were inspired by Champagne, for example, to create this wine?
No, there was not a big demand of sparkling wines, and the demand was more for sweet sparkling wines like Moscato. So it was a sort of challenge of a small group of people, a small group of pioneers, and my mother was one of them.
So I can imagine it was great risk, and they had to think of the long term, the opportunities for Franciacorta, because I think it was around about this time also that they had a similar story with wines of Cava in Spain. They were inspired by champagne, and so of course they're named after the Cave, the cellars.
But I think the luck, we can say, of Franciacorta was that it was at the beginning a very small group of people, very convinced about this idea, about this dream, and
Yes.
they worked hardly together to make very strict rules of production, more than in Champagne. And so without any kind of doubt, they have to be the best sparkling wine in the world. So that's why I think this long history, not so long because it's 50
Compared
years
to some wines in
yes.
Italy, of course.
And it's successful because the group of producers worked hardly together. It was a strange example in Italy.
So what were the sort of the rules, I guess, for Franciacorta?
So we have a very small yield per hectare, which is 90 tons. Is it?
No, 90?
90. So
90?
no, 9 tons.
9 tons.
Yes,
Okay.
sorry. And then a small yield of must from the grape.
Yes.
So only 65%. Then we have a very long period of aging on the lees. It's minimum 18 months. And all the steps of the production of Franciacorta are very strictly ruled.
And it can only be made from the 3 grape varieties?
The only 3 grapes allowed are Chardonnay, Pinot Blanc, and Pinot Noir, yes.
Pinot Nero.
Pinot Nero.
Okay. So when your mother established Il Mosnel as a Franciacorta house, what were her philosophies? How did she want to distinguish her house from others?
So she was a hunter, and she was very careful in a good agriculture, in making agriculture without using chemicals, or using less chemical as possible.
It's possible, okay.
Yes, and this was I'm speaking about 40 years ago, so it was,
of course,
very early. She didn't believe in organic, because at the time
it didn't exist.
Yes, but she was very for her was very important to be less aggressive with chemical on the earth, on the environment. And so this was one of her first idea. And then she loved particularly Pinot Bianco.
Yes.
And that's why she planted a good quantity, we can say more or less at that time 30% of Pinot Blanc. That Pinot Bianco, that was a big amount of it, if you consider the other producers. And it was a very good choice that now it's one of our point of distinction, I can say. So it's one of the most important thing in our identity as a winery, because we still have about 20% of Pinot Blanc, and we use it. And in our area, in our part of Franciacorta, it's very good, and it's very mineral and very long lasting. So very good for aging.
From memory, the location you're in, or the best area for Franciacorta is quite close to the lake.
So you mean our village or Franciacorta?
Well, I think I remember seeing a map at the
Yes.
winery at Il Mosnel, and they identified where the best Franciacorta is coming from, and from memory, it seemed like it was quite close to the lake, which has a very nice influence on the climate.
The lake has a nice influence on the climate of the whole Franciacorta,
Okay.
but our part is a little bit hidden by the Prealps.
Protected.
Yes. So it is a little bit more fresh.
Sure.
And so that's why we find in our Franciacorta this characteristic of minerality, of very good and long aging, and because it's a fresh area.
Okay. What do you know why they chose to use Pinot Bianco or Pinot Blanc instead of Pinot Meunier like they do in Champagne?
Because I think because it was more so more good. It was good for our climate. It was better with our climate because Pinot Meunier is not very good with our kind of climate.
And in terms of the establishment of the winery and the winemaking, what were the sort of the interesting steps that were established to distinguish Il Mosnel?
So it was one of the first wineries in the first 80s to use steel tanks.
Okay.
Instead of concrete.
Really? They were using concrete for the primary fermentation?
And also it was one of the first winery in this same period to use the control temperature. It was a new technology at the time. And it is very important for the aromas of Franciacorta to have a very slow first fermentation.
Yes.
And to preserve all the aromas of the grapes. And then in 1990 there was the first harvest and the first pressing with pneumatic presses, which were brand new technology in these years. So I can say that my mother was very she was an early adopter of new technologies.
Yes.
And she was a pioneer in her way of making wine. And it is one of our characteristics now.
So what were some of your early experiences as part of Il Mosnel and with your mother? Can you remember when you sort of were able to understand what it is your family did, what the business was, and how special Il Mosnel and Franciacorta were?
So my idea was when I grew up, I don't want to be a winemaker or a wine producer because I always look at my mother working a lot, Sundays, Christmas, and so it
very
was
hard work.
Very hard work. Very, she was very involved in this work.
Yes.
And then I tried to help her first by picking up the grape when I was at school.
Yes.
And it was a fantastic experience. It was very, very funny and very special. And then trying to understand more what is the meaning of producing wine, and slowly I began to work with her, and now not now. It's more than 15 years that I'm convinced that it's the most fabulous job I can do, because it's fantastic. It's a fantastic world, and also we can have a very good quality of life in a very beautiful place. So we are very lucky.
Of course, Italy has some very, very well-known sparkling wines. In fact, your neighbor to the east in Veneto is now the most consumed sparkling wine in the world in Prosecco. You know, the rise, the increase in production, and the association of Prosecco with Italy and sparkling wine is very strong. And there are other kind of areas in Italy that are very good for sparkling wine, like in Trento, there's some very well-known producers. And in Piemonte, they have some sparkling wine in Alta Langa, for example. But when Franciacorta was kind of created in the 50s and 60s, pretty much the only sparkling wine of any renown in Italy was Moscato d'Asti.
Yes, and Prosecco, yes.
Prosecco. When okay, but now the market for sparkling wine around the world is very different. There seems to be increasing demand for sparkling wine, but how do you find people react? Do you think there is much association with Franciacorta? Do people know Franciacorta? Do they know that Italy is making wine in Metodo Classico, particularly using some of the champagne varieties? Is it very challenging for Franciacorta?
It is very challenging, yes, because when we face the world, we have to explain what the Franciacorta is, because it's only a niche of consumers or wine lovers that knows what Franciacorta is. So we have to explain, we have to talk about the area, the wines, but we have good success when we propose it. So we have to work together, the Franciacorta producers, and to promote outside Italy, because I'm sure that we will be successful, because sparkling wines are very modern wines, are very good in this moment. They are good with everything, before the meal, during the meal, after the meal. They are refreshing. You can drink them in a lot of occasions. So it's a good challenge. And for example, in USA, in the last 5 years, I've seen that Franciacorta is becoming more and more popular. It's
in particular markets in the United States, particular areas, or just in general?
The area that I experienced are New York and San Francisco, which I visited 3-4 years ago, and this year, and I can notice the difference in the popularity of Franciacorta. And so I think it's a good sign, and I know that a lot of colleagues of Franciacorta wine producer are working well in the US and in Japan as well. So I think it's a good sign, and I know that we have to explain that we are not Prosecco. We are different kind of method, much more. Much longer, so we have to explain it.
So today, in this time, you're working with your brother.
Yes.
To run the estate, and how is the market in Italy though? Like, is it the Italian market also very difficult for Franciacorta?
In Italy, Franciacorta is very popular, is very well appreciated, is considered the best sparkling wine of Italy, and it's very requested. So it's a good it's a good moment for Franciacorta in Italy, and more in the northern part of Italy, but it's considered the best of Italy.
As far as the style of Franciacorta that you are producing now, you make a number of different styles. The non-vintage brut is a very classic style. You can find some similarities with Champagne, but I think that at Il Mosnel you are making some quite unique styles as well. For example, one that I discovered that I'd never heard of before is satin. Can you tell me a little bit about satin and how what a special product this is?
So satin is a very important kind of Franciacorta. It has, by disciplinare of Franciacorta, so by our rules, it has to be produced only with white grapes, and then it has to be a brut, and it has less pressure, so it's about 4.5 bars instead of 6. So this gives very small bubbles, very creamy wine, and it is delicate like silk, and it has
satin.
Yes, that's why the name satin. And I think it's very nice because it's very important for consumer not appreciating particularly sparkling wine, because it could be the first step towards sparkling wines.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very important for Franciacorta for finding new consumers.
Because generally Prosecco is not as sparkling, doesn't have as much pressure as Metodo Classico or as Franciacorta. So if they're familiar a little bit with Prosecco, I guess they can taste the satin and see, oh, it's just a much better version of Prosecco.
Yes.
It sounds very simple to explain it this way.
It's a first step from Prosecco towards Metodo Classico, towards something more important, yes.
But also at Il Mosnel, I'm not sure in comparison with many other Franciacorta producers, but you tend to go for lower dosage, and in some cases there is no dosage liqueur added, so it's completely dry. How do you find the perception of these wines in the market?
So we are very convinced producer of non-dosé Franciacorta, because for us are the best expression of the grape, of the terroir, of how we work. So of 7 different Franciacorta, we have 3 Padosé and 1 extra brut, so 4 very dry Franciacorta. And in the last 5 years, we have seen the demand of the dry Franciacorta increasing year by year. So
I think this is also
trend.
This is a trend for Champagne. It's a trend for other Méthode traditionnelle sparkling wines. Of course, when I worked for Chandon in Australia, they were an early adopter of a zero dosage sparkling wine, and demand for this in many markets increased quite quickly. And the average dosage in Champagne, I think, is sort of coming down a little bit, particularly for vintage.
Yes. That's it. I think it's a global trend. Yes.
Yes.
I think because it's a sort of the consumers start from a sweet wine, and then with more experience, the final product you want to drink is a dry one.
Yes.
I think it's a normal. Developing.
But part of the reason that you are here in Australia is because recently they had the Gambero Rosso Tre Bicchieri, or 3 glass tasting. Gambero Rosso, of course, is the it's actually a restaurant guide, but they also write a guide for wines of Italy. And based on the scores, they can be awarded 1, 2, or 3 glasses. And so the highest scoring wines receive 3 glasses. A great, very prestigious kind of award to be bestowed on a wine, because I think generally there's only about 200 wines each year which are awarded 3 glasses. And the wine that was you're showing here for the tasting, amongst other 3-glass wines, was the EBB from 2009. Now, this is a particular, very special product for you and your family, for Il Mosnel. Tell me a little bit about EBB.
EBB is the wine that my brother Giulio and me wanted to dedicate to my mother, to her memory. Unfortunately, she died in 2007, and we decided to make a special wine with our best Chardonnay and to produce it in her memory. And so EBB stands for Emanuela Barboglio, so are their initials. And for us, is the wine of our heart. Is very important, and it was very important for us that it has been awarded with 3 glasses and 3 bicchieri, 3 glasses, and also it's a very elegant and important wine, and it's the big success for Giulio and for me is that this wine is very similar to our mother, so it's a real expression of her character and her personality. So for us, it's a special wine.
One of the other interesting wines that you have, of course, is the Riserva, the QDE, which for me is very interesting, apart from the fact that it's a very amazing product and it had spent a long time aging on the lees, but the fact that the label changes each year. How did the creation of the concept to change the label each year come about?
No, it's QDE stands for Questione di Etichetta, so it means that this wine is linked to an award among designers. It's organized by us and by ADI, which is the Association of Designers of Italy. So we normally release this wine every 2 years, and each release has this award, and we invite normally 10-12 designers to create a special label and a special package for this wine, and then we decide which is the best, and the best label become the label of the wine. So every single vintage has a different label, has a different package, and so it's a special edition. In fact, normally the production is 4,000 bottles. They are numbered bottles, so it's a very limited edition, and it's important for us because this wine represents our best wines. When we decide when the vintage is good, we decide to produce this wine, and we choose the best that we have in the cellar. So it doesn't have a blend. It changes every
so
vintage.
It's only the best.
Yes.
Okay.
So as the blend changes, so the label changes. So every year is a unique.
And it's purely expression of the best of the vintage.
Yes.
Okay. Now, of course, Il Mosnel sort of celebrates tradition and using traditional techniques and celebrating, the legacy of your mother, of course. But you are also very modern in your approaches in terms of communication. You are very active on social media.
Yes.
You'll be found on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. So can you? What are the best ways that people can keep in touch with Il Mosnel and with you?
Yes, we have our accounts on Twitter, which is Il Mosnel. We have our Facebook fan page, which is Il Mosnel again, and the same on Instagram. So I try to talk about the life in the winery, to explain what's happening in the different periods of the year, or if we are traveling like in Sydney in these days. I try to talk of our experiences, and I think it's nice to be in contact with our consumers. And so I have also my personal Twitter account, which is Uchibi, and the same is on Instagram. So it's nice to.
What's Uchibi?
Uchibi is my in family. My name is Uchi.
Okay.
So Uchibi.
Lucia Uchi.
Yes.
So the nickname.
It's my nickname in family. Yes, family and friends. And so B stands for Barzanò. So Uchibi is my name, and I try to talk about what's or how is the life of a producer. So
of course.
On the back, I don't know the name. So on the back side of the winery.
Behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes, thank you.
And speaking of behind the scenes, of course, people can come and visit Il Mosnel when they're in Franciacorta.
Oh yes, we are very happy to have to show how we work, to show our cellars, which are ancient and very nice, very fascinating. You've been there last June, so I think it's a good experience. And also in the nice season in spring or summer, which are coming, you can also visit walking or riding a bike our vineyards, and having a picnic in the vineyards, which is a nice experience, or tasting the wines normally in the winery.
But you can find all that information on the website.
Yes, we have our website, which is ilmosnel.com, and then you can email us and asking to book a visit.
And you can read all about the wonderful products that Il Mosnel makes, and also ask questions, find out where you can purchase some wine if it's available in your market. But I do appreciate, of course, your time in down here whilst you're in Australia, and to introduce you to some of the customers and to the consumers, of course, at the Tre Bicchieri tasting. Mm-hmm. And of course, thank you very much for making some time to be on the Vincast.
Thank you for your invitation.
And as always, thank you guys for listening to another episode of the Vincast. I have been James Garesbrook, otherwise known as the Intrepid Wino, and you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Intrepid Wino, and also the podcast on Twitter at the Vincast, to find out when the new episodes are available. You can come onto Facebook and like me there, facebook.com/intrepidwino, to see various things. But the best place to come is intrepidwino.com, where you can download not only all of the previous episodes of the podcast to listen to at your leisure, but you can also read various musings, and it's very interactive. You can leave comments, and that would be great to hear from you there. But you can also subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or Player FM, and you can search for the Vincast through there. But if you do decide to subscribe to the podcast and download the episodes there, please do leave me a rating and review, because it helps me out immensely and gets the word out to other wine lovers like yourselves. Like I mentioned, I'll be heading overseas for a couple of weeks to see lots of things. Obviously, I'll be sharing as much as possible, so make sure you are following me on the social medias. But until next time, bye.